realised at that point the people that were sailing faster than us were doing a big pump on every wave and really scooting the boat down all the waves. So we had a lot of practice that. It was a really windy event. We had a lot of practice. I spoke last week about that's where we learned that we had to have all the legs over the side when we were going upwind. So we learned a lot in those conditions, sailing against lots of different good guys from the south coast down there.
Actually, there's something I was going to ask you. This is completely off the point, but it was going back to Ian Southworth and his era in 707. I read somewhere that he tended to sail with 4 big blokes on the side. Yeah,
he actually that year in Foy he had a big guy. He was a really nice guy. He took a newspaper on the boat, and that's relevant when I tell you that we sailed one day when there wasn't a lot of wind, and he actually sat downstairs, and he roll-tacked the boat from downstairs with his newspaper. And just sat reading the newspaper going upwind or downwind and sat literally just behind the mast and just went from side to side at the widest point that he could, but keeping his weight forward, because I guess they recognised that he was a big chap and he had much more. He had easy movement downstairs. Whilst it wasn't necessarily the most enjoyable pastime and seeing all the scenery.
We made Gussie go downstairs once, he wasn't very
yeah, it's not for everyone, but I'll tell you what, they were really quick. Really quick. Equally, had he been on the top sides, clambering from one side round the back onto the other side, then the boat would have lost a lot through each of the tacks and each of the manoeuvres. So it worked for them, and I guess it was important when it got lighter.
Were they okay in light winds?
And they were fine in the light winds because of the way that the style that they sailed the boat. And I don't recall seeing them in the windy weather. We were sailing around about mid-fleet, I guess, at that stage, and I don't remember really seeing much of them at all, apart from the stars. But in support of Andy and touting all the events, the more practice you can have with the more boats, i.e. go to as many events as you can if you can get. Have we got trailers for the club boats? Can we get them across to events and stuff as well?
Always way the game boats to events.
Yeah, getting people in the boats and getting practice in different areas. Knowing the fourth is one thing, but actually getting a chance to go and sail in other areas against other people in other 707s. Is where you're going to learn the most, by just seeing how other people do it, rather than just sailing around the fourth with the same people all the time. Even if you get an opportunity to go and sail on another boat from 707 on the west coast, absolutely well worth doing something like that too. Just getting more exposure on the 707s. It's a plug for you.
Anything else? What anyone wants to bring up?
Just earlier on, you were talking about when you were sailing downwind and you had the kicker on, and you said you wouldn't have the kicker off. But can you just tell me why you wouldn't have why you have the kicker on going downhill?
Yeah.
Downwind rather.
So I wouldn't. No, downhill that's fine. I wouldn't have the kicker on bar tight. So when I'm coming up to the windward mark, I would always ease the kicker a bit before we bear away, so that it's easy to let the main out, and it eases a bit of the power. But if you let the kicker just completely off, let's say extreme, then what's going to happen is that the boom's going to lift up and the top of the mainsail is going to spill open, and the boat becomes quite unstable. If you're going dead downwind and that sail's spilled out at the top, then actually what can happen is that the wind can catch at the top. If you sail by the lee a little bit too much, it can actually push the boat over to windward. So having enough kicker on to keep the leech tight, but not too tight that it's pulling the boom all the way hard down, then so it's I say halfway with the kicker normally. What that means, I guess, depends on the range of the kicker that each boat's got set up. But I guess I try and keep the leech so it's not hooking and it's not too tight, but it's not spilling around the front. So
reverse broaches are good fun.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly what it'll make you do. So it'll make the boat heel to windward, and as soon as the boat heels to windward, then the chine on the right hand side, on the windward side, will naturally want the boat to bear away. So the helm's then pushing the tiller away to try and stop the boat from.
See, that's another time I stood up.
Because you might get wet.
We did that at Scottish Series last year, and our top of our mast went in between the boom and the deck of a Sonata, beside us. It's just slightly terrifying for them. I didn't see it. I was too busy clinging on for dear life at that point.
So that's a great example of how, if you've got too much kicker off, then that'll induce the Chinese jibe or the hoiking the boat over to windward and then screwing up down to leeward and everybody on the windward side all of a sudden ends up in the water. So getting that kicker right, just letting it off might actually make things worse.
Right.
So having it at the right place is important. So I guess from that point of view, we spoke about broaches earlier and what are some of the steps that we would go through. I probably wouldn't want to bear away if I was at the point where I had to ease more kicker. I'd probably want to luff up at that point, at which point we'd be wanting to dump the sheet and maybe even dump the halyard and get the kite recovered. So I guess going out and practicing and seeing what happens. The best, it's really easy to say what I do and what any of us do in a broach. Actually, the best way to do it is just go out and practice it. And it doesn't feel nice, it doesn't sound nice when the spinnaker's crackling away. But the more you're familiar with it, the less scary it becomes. And it just becomes a natural instinct of, oh yeah, we've got a broach, not a big bother. Well, this is what we do, that's what we do. If it gets really bad, we'll have to drop the halyard and get it all gathered and then get it back up again. But let's not drop the halyard, the sheet and the guy, because then we know the kite's going to be out there somewhere. And that might just make things all a bit worse. So make sure you always hold on to at least one of them, and preferably it's one of the ones from low down, not just the one at the top, otherwise you've got a big flag. And that's not easy to get down either. So yeah, just getting out and having a wee practice and making mistakes and understanding what it feels like. It's very infrequent that it's going to go really wrong. It can do obviously, but it's very infrequent that it's going to go really wrong. The boats are pretty bulletproof from that point of view. I have seen Jock's been stood on the rudder once when he's had a broach out underneath the fourth row bridge here. When the boat went right over and mainsail hit the water, so it can happen. But typically the boat will just flip back up again.
He didn't sink it, did he?
No, he didn't sink it.
That was the E-boat.
That was the E-boat. Yeah.
Try and discourage everybody from dangling off the high guardrail as well, because that tends to snap the stanchions.
Yeah,
Encourage people to stand on vertical surfaces that become horizontal surfaces, like so put your weight on your feet rather than hanging off something.
Yeah.
We've snapped the stanchion. Never
Right.
dangling off. You were on board.
That was a great story.
That was
actually.
your
That was
first
because
broach.
that was because the houseman didn't say, "What? We were about to do this."
Sam said she'd never broached before, and in the spirit of practice, we decided that we would do
15
it.
seconds later you said, here we go.
Happened quicker than expected.
Gives you a good view of your keel though. Make sure it's still there.
She was very pleased.
Conscious family has spoken about jibing too much and what you do through a jibe. Is that something that folks want to talk about? Don't repeat because Stuart and I just drive, so we've no idea what happens.
Well,
but
there
that's
is
a bit of a lie.
one thing we have to do, and that's keep the boat going quite straight.
Yeah.
Because if you're wandering all over the place looking about you, that doesn't make life easier for the guys in front.
In actual fact, we can actually make it easy or make it really difficult for the rest of the crew as well. From that point of view. So one of the things that Stuart and I will be focusing on when we're driving the boat through a jibe is exactly that. I keep it nice and straight and real gradual movements. You don't want to do a quick. We spoke last week about when you tack the tiller going across to the point where the end of the tiller would be in line with the gunnel or the side tank inside. I don't think any of us would use as much tiller as that through a jibe. It would be a much more gradual push away with the tiller or pull, depending which side. I push because I'm on the leeward side already, and I guess you are on the windward side.
Usually in the windward side.
Yeah.
So yeah, quite small helm movements.
Yeah.
And then only bear off as far as you need to, and then physically move the mainsail across rather than trying to go all the way around until it comes across at its own chord.
So you would be going quite far downwind then to get ready for your jibe. So say that this was the wind.
No, you keep the pace on as much as possible, and it's just once the manoeuvre starts, you just gradually, as the manoeuvre starts, that's when you start heading downwind. Because if you start heading slowly, really slow downwind, you lose pace. Especially if it gets windy, then everything's going to start loading up, and it's going to get much harder. As much as possible through jibes, you're looking to try and keep the pace on, and just get it a nice smooth, like almost like a smooth, like make it look like a nice sort of curved edge.
So you'd veer off smoothly and then
Yeah.
pause
Yep.
So
effectively.
kind of gradually and just